How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys, Alex and Ryan. Today we're talking about the catcher position. So Jose Trevino yesterday said that he's making good progress. He should start hitting in a couple of weeks here. And ultimately, we have a big conversation here. Austin Wells, Ben Rortvedt, Kyle Higashioka, Jose Trevino. There's too many catchers in the room. We're going to have to make some changes here. Someone's going to have to go to AAA, or maybe general manager Brian Cashman, and given he sticks around, which is anticipated, decides to trade some of them and get some value for some good defensive catchers. Now, Higashioka, despite my criticisms of the past, has been pretty solid since stepping in to help supplement the void left by Trevino. I think he has a close to a 49% strike rate at 6 catcher framing runs. He's been pretty solid. Ben Rortvedt has become Garrett Cole's personal catcher, and Austin Wells kind of feels like he's on the outside looking in, but the Yankees like him. Like, he's got a good swing. He's posted double-digit walk rates his entire minor league career. His strikeout rate isn't anything to be too concerned about, and a lot of the pitchers are saying good things about Austin Wells. They really like him behind the dish, and he's a high-quality guy. He brings a lot of good vibes to the locker room. He's got the stash. He's fun. He's 24 years old. He's the youngest of the bunch. He's pre-arbitration. He's going to cost you next to nothing, whereas Higashioka stands to cost you upwards of $3 million per season in the last year of arbitration. Before he hits the free agency, he's a righty, and he's 33 years old. So I feel like the cards are a little stacked against Higgy to make this team next year, because the Yankees probably feel like they can replicate his value at a cheaper price point and maybe get similar defensive quality. But we want to talk about this. Who do we see starting next year? Who do we see making this team? What the Yankees can do with some of these alternative options? But Ryan, before we dive into it, how do you do today, my friend?
I'm doing all right, kind of looking at what the Yankees have in their catching room. It's a little weird, as you mentioned, right? Like, you're looking at it, okay, you have Rortvedt, Higashioka, and Wells. The worst defender over that group is probably Wells, like on paper, but as you mentioned, the pitchers like throwing to Wells. He's looked a little bit better back there. Baseball Prospectus likes his defense a little bit. They think his framing numbers are pretty good. That's always encouraging. You're seeing a guy who, for the most part, has kind of had the reputation as he's not a catcher, he's never going to be a catcher, so on and so forth. The time will tell. Like, I'm not going to start taking victory laps about his defense in September. Like, at that, if you're going to take victory laps about his defense, do you have to say he's a bad hitter as well because he hasn't hit in his small sample size? Overall, I think he's somebody you have to take a chance on. I don't see a reason why the Yankees aren't going to take a chance on him. I don't see a reason why the Yankees shouldn't take the chance on him. Quite frankly, I view him as somebody that the Yankees should look to build around. And if he doesn't pan out, then you have some guys internally, like you have Augustin Ramirez, who I think is a pretty good catching prospect, and you're the Yankees. You have a lot of money. If it really doesn't work out and you have to spend, go ahead and do so. But I think he's going to have the best mentor he could possibly have, and that's Jose Trevino, who, this time last year, we were raving about just how well liked he was by the pitching staff, just how athletic he was behind the plate. I know people don't look at him as like a guy who throws people out, but in 2022, he was excellent in terms of caught stealing runs. He's done a really good job behind the plate. He's an all-around. I mean, Jose Trevino is arguably the best defensive player in Major League Baseball when he's right. And having that guy work with Austin Wells is really good. And knowing that, Jose Trevino doesn't hit righties well, he hits lefties pretty well. I say pretty well for a catcher. It's like a 95 to 100 WRC plus. Last few years, it's been around 115. If you get that from Jose Trevino, you're going to be more than happy. I think a more realistic projection would be like 75 to 80. But even then, that's fine with the defense. If you get a 105 to 110 WRC plus out of Austin Wells, and he's doing it against right-handed pitching, that's kind of the big thing, right? Like, this team isn't good against right-handed pitching. They need guys who can help them against right-handed pitching. I view Austin Wells as a solution there. I think Ben Rortvedt can stay in the organization. Maybe they move him. I don't know. But I think he does have minor league options still, so they don't have to. In the situation of Kyle Higashioka, I think he's traded. I know he might get DFA'd, but I think somebody will trade for him. The Yankees DFA'd Lucas Litke. They still got something back for him. They actually got a decent prospect in Caleb Durbin that I kind of really like, but that's a different topic. Austin Wells, like, he's going to take Higashioka's job. As you mentioned, it's like, what purpose does having two right-handed catchers that can't hit righties on the same roster serve for you? But if you're another team, let's say you're the Marlins, right? Like, Kyle Higashioka's 80-something WRC plus and really good defense is really good for you, right? Like, the Marlins, I think their starting catcher is Jacob Stallings. He has like a 60 WRC plus, and he's not as good of a defender as Higashioka is. So, overall, Higashioka's market, and you can kind of tell me how you feel about this. I think it's better than people think. He's a veteran catcher who, for the most part, has been a really good defender and has been a part of some really good Yankee pitching staffs. Like, he really came into his own in 2020. That was the first year at Matt Blake. 2021, 2022, and 2023, the Yankees have pitched really well, and Higashioka has been there all 3 years. I'm not saying he's why they're pitching well, but he's doing something right if they've kept him around. I know that Cole maybe doesn't like throwing to him, but that's Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole is a particular guy. The dude yells at Ben Wertvet in the clubhouse and in the dugout, and they have get into public screaming matches. Maybe he's just not a normal guy, right? Like, I think we kind of forget that aspect of things. Pitchers are a little bit weird. So, Alex, I think there's a world where they move Higashioka without having to DFA him, without having to wait through spring training. What do you think about that?
When it comes to Kyle Higashioka, I think he's a replaceable player, and I think you could probably replace him because you want more lefty bats, and lefties theoretically are going to hit better against righties. And as we talked about yesterday, Ryan, the Yankees have not been good against right-handed pitching. So if you want to get better against righties, naturally a lefty comes to mind as a good supplement. Now, Austin Wells is a little bit interesting because, we know he's got the tools to be a good offensive player, but he hasn't blown us away in AAA or in minor leagues. He's been an average hitter at each level, but he maintains being an average level at each hitter at each level rather. So if he can do that same exact thing in the majors, you have a pretty good player there. And look, if he had a 95 to 100 WRC plus, that's probably above average for a catcher, and you can live with that. You can live with a 95 to 100 WRC plus catcher that has good defense. Now, here's my concern is that Garrett Cole probably isn't going to trust Austin Wells. That's Jose Trevino's job, right? Jose Trevino is going to be the starter, in my opinion. He's one of the best defensive catchers in baseball. He was an all-star last year. The wrist injury hurt his offensive metrics. I'm gonna side on that fence just because he had that wrist injury he suffered in spring training, and it lasted until he played 55 games in the season until he just couldn't go anymore. So I respect the hell out of Trevino for battling through that injury. His offensive stats did take a pretty sizable dip. It was noticeable, but I think he gets back to his normal self now. He's close to being 100% and starting to work his way back into hitting and whatnot. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic that Trevino is going to be just fine. He's the starter. He's the guy that's playing on an everyday basis. But matchup-wise, Ryan, the question really is this. Your backup catcher needs to be an asset in some ways. Do you see Austin Wells' bat being more of an asset than Vortfet and Higashioka's? Because that's where I think the difference comes in. Jose Trevino is going to play 120 games in a healthy year. He'll get 50 games off maybe. They'll play those matchups. Right-handed pitchers. Austin Wells doing well against right-handed pitching. You take advantage of that. Whatever it might be. How do you think it's really the backup catcher conversation we have to have. What are the variables that are most important to you in terms of what that second guy needs to have and what he has to offer this team when he's called upon?
Yeah, so I was actually, Alex, this is interesting. I was kind of thinking this morning, I was like, man, why did Austin Wells really struggle at AA? And then I had found out some pretty interesting things. Apparently, they were messing around with a pre-tacked ball in AA. This isn't something that I'm speculating either. This is something that multiple outlets have talked about. I've had some conversations with some people that are know people in the industry or do prospect stuff who have talked about, hey, there are pre-tacked baseballs, and certain guys didn't adjust to it very well. If you have a guy who now he can have a pre-tacked baseball, his spin rates are all the way up. The dude's locating everything. It's wow, now I'm facing tougher hit pitchers. Where did this come out of nowhere? I'm not entirely stunned that Wells struggled the way he did. It felt like the AA, the Eastern League as a whole just kind of took a step back. I'm going to get the numbers on this now, but I'm pretty sure the Eastern League run environment this year is a lot worse than where it was last year. And I can speculate this even more because Somerset led the Eastern League in OPS at a 776. Not saying a 776 OPS is bad, but given the context of what we know about baseball, a 776 OPS isn't something you would consider okay, this should represent the best mark in baseball. It would kind of be like if the league leader in passing touchdowns had 25 passing touchdowns. It's that doesn't really add up. What happened at that level? So I'm a little bit curious to see if that was why he struggled. I guess we'll know next year. If he doesn't hit, we'll be hey, it wasn't that, he just couldn't hit. And if he hits next year, then we'll say, hey, it's probably the tacked balls or some rotten luck, whatever it may be. The average OPS in the Eastern League this year is 721, a 391 average slugging percentage. So Austin Wells' OPS, which is around like 760 or 770 at that level, is actually significantly better than the league average. I just don't think WRC Plus adjusted for that. Could be wrong. I'm not exactly sure when the pre-tack ball was and wasn't being used. It sparked that thought I had. It sparked something I had kind of like pieced together from hearing some things about the pre-tack baseball and all that stuff. And for comparison, in 2022, the average Eastern League OPS was 727. So that's about a 10-point increase. Slugging percentage was 402 versus 390. That's a 12-point increase. So those are significant, those are pretty important marks. I think as a whole, what happened was just the AA environment kind of got worse. Wells was a victim of that. And hopefully next year looks really good. But definitely you don't want to, bank your whole season on Austin Wells being good. But I feel like you'd rather bank on him being good than bank on like Rortvedt or Higashioka doing it. I think the upside's clearly higher with Wells, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, financially, it also makes sense, right? Like, financially, you look at what Higgy's going to make, and it's, upwards of $3 million per season. Rortvedt is still really, really cheap. He is a lefty. He is becoming, I guess, kind of in stream and coming, like, Garrett Cole's coming off a ridiculous start, and who is behind the dish? Ben Rortvedt. So I wonder here if Cole's going to start favoring Rortvedt, or if he's fine going back to Jose Trevino. I am curious to see how that goes. I still think he built this Cy Young campaign mainly with Jose Trevino during the first 55 games of the season. He started out so strong, and he's maintained that. Like he's in the front runner. He's in the front running spot to win that award. So, I don't know. It really depends. Like I really do think that what happens at the catcher position is really determined by like Garrett Cole, like partially like I want this guy. If he's like I want Trevino, the secondary guy becomes who gives us the most upside, right? We know what Higashioka is. We know he's about a 75 to 70 WRC plus player every single season. He's a fine defensive catcher, but he's a little bit more expensive. I think if you are willing to struggle through the offensive kind of inconsistencies of Austin Wells early in his career, I do believe that he will end up becoming a net positive and probably much better than either Rortvedt or Higashioka. So I do want to give him that luxury, but I think it does come down to spring training, like who really performs the best. It could go either way. Worst case scenario, Wells goes back to AAA and you call him up if you need him. Worst case scenario, Rortvedt goes back to AAA and you call him up if you need him. Higashioka, as you mentioned, he has a little bit of value. He has 1 year left of arbitration. He's not overly expensive, and he could start at catcher for a lot of teams. So I feel as though if you're the Yankees, you're leveraging that value now, just as you kind of referenced. You try to get as much value as you can from some of those players. I think general manager Brian Cashman is going to try to get rid of some guys that, they just don't necessarily need. And they're going to start committing a little bit more to their youth prospects and guys they've groomed over years. I think that's a reasonable strategy, one that will keep costs down a little bit, and one that ultimately promotes your farm system. It gives your farm guys an incentive to play hard. You know what I mean? Wow, look at all these guys. Pereira's up here. Dominguez is up here. Wells is up here. Oswald Peraza's up here. Oswaldo Cabrera's up here. Anthony Volpe is up here. And then some. Maybe Will Warren and Drew Thorpe. Your minor league players are now looking like, yo, hold on. We can actually play in MLB with this team. They're not gonna boost our asses up and then trade our asses away when it comes down to it. They're actually gonna play us. That's someone to fight for. Look, I'm not an athlete like that. I'm not a professional athlete. But I do understand the laws of, just offering something to somebody and promising them, like, you do have a real chance of getting there. Like, just incentivizing is what I'm trying to say. The laws of incentivization. Like, if you say, if you do this and you work hard and you hit well and you put everything, put the pedal to the metal rather, you have a chance to reach the MLB. And I think that does a lot for people's psyche, it does a lot for their confidence and motivation. So maybe that does play a bigger part in guys just like stepping on the gas and really giving it their all. Not that they aren't already, but that they know they have a shot to actually reach the majors with the Yankees. A lot of these guys, man, look, if you're a prospect in the minor league system and you're like, I have a shot to play for the freaking Yankees, that's special. Like playing for the Yankees is special, despite the fact they're coming off a really bad season this year. There is still an aura about the Yankees playing for them that is special, and I think minor league players want to prove their worth. I think the Yankees should give them some more time, even if they struggle a little bit out of the gate. You have veterans here to smooth that over. You got guys like Judge. You got LeMahieu. Volpe will take a step forward. You have Rizzo, who hopefully will coming off the concussion situation. Hopefully Stanton turns it around. Unlikely, but we'll see. There's a lot of variables here that you can utilize to kind of smooth over positions that may struggle a little bit early on in the season. But when it comes to the catcher position, full circle here. I do believe that trading one or two of those guys away was probably the best alternative for the Yankees, and maybe probably only one of them. Higashioka makes the most sense, and then keeping Wells and Warford on the back burner, let them battle it out for the second job there, because they're both lefties, both got some decent defensive traits, and Warford's probably leading that charge right now just because Garrett Cole likes him so much, but or at least we're kind of assuming that based on how well they've kind of perform together. So it's interesting. But guys, I'd love your perspectives below on this topic. Definitely going to be a really interesting couple of weeks and months leading up to the winter months, where we're looking at the free agency class and really diving into the rumors. But, think about what Aaron Judge said yesterday. There's going to be some really difficult talks this offseason. There's going to be a lot to sift through. And it seems like Judge is going to be right in the middle of that entire process, Ryan, which is kind of cool. I think that's a good thing. I think Judge being in the middle of this is a good thing, because it gives you a voice that's not off the field. You have a guy on the field saying, this guy's too injured. This guy's, they throw their 2 cents in. He's a player. I feel like he should have a say, or at least have like an opinion about it, and they should listen to it, because the guys that have never played the game, the guys that they're not on the field, the guys that are, just making these decisions up top, some of them, haven't played. I do feel as though sometimes they lose touch with what actually works on a baseball diamond, and they're trying to put together a roster that just is imbalanced to a degree. So hopefully they can find a little bit more balance through, good opinions and taking all the information and digesting it and making it into a successful equation. But as I said before, guys, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to drop your comments below. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.